The racist neighbors called the cops to evict me, calling me a squatter in my own home. Because I'm black, they didn't know my son is a Navy commander. When his fleet arrived to escort me to the gala, the neighbors begged for forgiveness. My name is Dorothy Webb. I am 62 years old. I wake up every morning in a house with 14-foot ceilings, a wraparound porch, 4 bedrooms, a sunroom that catches the light perfectly at 7 a.m., and a garden that I've been tending for 3 years with my own 2 hands. The house sits at the top of Maplewood Drive, the nicest street in this part of the city. Big oak trees, wide driveways, neighbors who wave at each other, or at least most of them do. The house is worth $1.5 million, and it belongs to me. My son Marcus gave it to me on my 59th birthday. He had it bought, furnished, and the deed transferred into my name before I ever saw the front door. I cried for 45 minutes when he showed me. I told him it was too much. He said, "Mom, nothing is too much for the woman who raised me on 2 jobs and never once complained." I moved in 3 years ago, and for 2 of those 3 years, everything was peaceful. Then Linda moved in next door. Linda and her husband Greg arrived about a year ago. They didn't buy their place. They rented a company flat that Greg's employer provides as part of his relocation package. It's a nice enough unit, smaller than mine, much smaller actually. A 2-bedroom apartment attached to the end of the building on the left side of my property. I didn't know this at first. I found out later, through a neighbor who knew the building manager. The apartment is owned by Greg's company. They live there on the company's arrangement. They pay nothing out of pocket. I tell you this not to judge them. People live all kinds of ways. I tell you this because it matters for what happened next. I noticed Linda watching my house from the beginning. Not the friendly kind of watching, the calculating kind. The kind where someone looks at something and their jaw tightens just slightly because they cannot figure out why you have what you have. She never said anything directly, but there were comments. Small ones. The kind people say with a smile so they can deny them later. "That's such a big house for one person, isn't it?" she said once at the mailboxes. "Do you have family helping you with the upkeep?" she asked another time. Once, and this one I will never forget, she said, "You know, houses like this on this street, they usually go to established families. Old money, you know, people who've been here for generations." I smiled at her every single time, and I said nothing that I couldn't say in church, because I knew what she was doing. She was trying to figure out how I had this house, and she was struggling deeply, visibly struggling with the answer she was coming up with. On a Saturday morning in October, I was outside watering my roses, old gardening clothes, dirt on my gloves, hair wrapped up. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman at home, in her garden, on a weekend morning. I heard Linda's door open. I didn't look up. I heard footsteps, then more footsteps. Then I heard voices: Linda, Greg, and their neighbor Paul from down the road. 3 of them, walking toward my driveway like they had held a meeting. Linda stopped at the edge of my property line, just at the line, like she'd measured it. "Excuse me," she said, sweet voice, too sweet. "I don't mean to be rude, but we've been noticing some activity at this property, and, well, we just want to make sure everything is in order. Do you actually live here?" I stood up, pulled off one glove, looked at her. "Yes, Linda, I live here." She tilted her head. "Because the owner of this property, do you know them well? Are you house-sitting, or—" "I am the owner." Silence. Greg looked at the ground. Paul took a small step backward. Linda pulled out her phone. "I think I'm going to call the non-emergency line, just to confirm things, for the neighborhood." I looked at her phone. I looked at her face. I saw the jealousy in it, the specific, sharp jealousy, of someone who cannot accept that the thing they want is already in the hands of someone they decided shouldn't have it. I said nothing. I waited, because I knew something she didn't, and that something was about to change everything. 2 police cars arrived in less than 10 minutes. Officer Reeves and his partner stepped out. Young men. Officer Reeves had a look on his face that told me he already suspected what kind of call this was. But he had a job to do, so he did it. "Ma'am, we received a report of a possible unauthorized occupant at this address. I apologize for the inconvenience. Could I see some identification and proof of residence?" I looked at him for a moment. Then I nodded. Of course. I walked into my house slowly, deliberately, because I refused to appear flustered, and I went to the filing cabinet in my kitchen. I pulled out my driver's license, the property deed with my name on it, 3 utility bills, my property tax receipt from last year. And because I had learned a long time ago to keep these things together, the original purchase confirmation with the transfer date and the attorney's signature, I walked back outside with a folder. By now, 6 neighbors had come outside. Some pretended to check their mail. One stood openly on her porch. A man I'd seen twice in 3 years was suddenly very interested in his front hedge. They were all watching me, prove that I lived in my own home. Let me tell you what that feels like. It doesn't feel like fear. I want to be clear about that. It doesn't feel like weakness. What it feels like is a particular kind of exhaustion. The exhaustion of a person who has spent decades being excellent, being documented, being verified, being proved, when all she ever wanted was to be believed. I have been a black woman in this country for 62 years. I know how to stand still in the fire. I know how to hold my documents and my dignity at the same time. I have had practice. What I have never fully gotten used to is doing it in my own front yard. Officer Reeves went through everything, carefully. He matched the name on the deed to the name on my ID. He checked the address on the utility bills. He looked at the tax receipt. Linda was watching from the edge of my driveway, arms crossed. Expression carefully neutral, the look of someone who is hoping very much to be right. Officer Reeves handed my folder back to me. "Ma'am, everything is in order. You are clearly... Are you absolutely certain?" Linda stepped forward. Her voice was still sweet, but it had an edge now. "Because I've done some research, and houses in this price range on this street, they change hands through very specific channels. Very specific. And I just want to make sure." Officer Reeves turned to face her fully. "Ma'am, her name is on the deed. Her name is on the utility accounts. Her name is on the tax record. She owns this house. This call is resolved." Linda's mouth closed. Greg was looking at the oak tree beside the driveway, like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. Paul had already begun walking back toward his house. I thanked Officer Reeves quietly. He gave me a small, apologetic nod. The neighbors drifted back inside. The police cars pulled away. Linda walked back to her company flat without saying another word. The door closed behind her. I stood in my driveway for a moment, just stood there, looking at my house, the 14-foot ceilings, the wraparound porch. The garden, Marcus, had the landscaper's design from a photo I had described to him on the phone, something that feels like Sunday morning. Then I went inside. I sat at my kitchen table, and for 60 seconds I let myself feel everything. The indignity, the exhaustion, the anger I had not shown outside. 60 seconds. Then I wiped my face, because it was Saturday, and on Saturday evening I had somewhere to be, and what was about to happen was something Linda would spend a very long time thinking about. Stay right here, because what I'm about to tell you about my son, about this house, about where that evening went, This is the part that will give you chills. Don't move. Don't click away. Keep reading. Let me tell you the story of this house properly, because Linda thought she had figured it out. She thought she knew the story. She didn't know a single chapter of it. I raised my son Marcus alone from the time he was 11 years old. His father, my husband, James, died of a heart attack. Sudden. No warning. One morning, he was at the breakfast table. By afternoon, he was gone. For 4 years after that, I worked 2 jobs. Days at the school district office, evenings at a medical billing company. I was home by 9, up by 5:30. I never missed Marcus's school events. Never missed a meal I could help it. I held that household, together with both hands, and whatever faith I had left. Marcus watched all of it. He didn't say much about it when he was a boy, but he watched. He absorbed it. He stored it somewhere, deep inside himself. He joined the Navy at 22. I was terrified, and I was proud, both things at once, simultaneously, the way only a mother can hold 2 enormous feelings in the same heartbeat. He rose. Steadily, year by year, deployment by deployment. He didn't cut corners. He didn't ask anyone for favors. He earned every stripe, every commendation, every promotion with nothing but his own work, and his father's stubbornness and his mother's refusal to quit. Today, at 38 years old, my son is a commander in the United States Navy. He has been awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. His name is on the wall of his base's Hall of Honor. He has been written about in military publications. His commanding officers have called him, and I am quoting from a letter I keep in my Bible, one of the finest officers I have had the honor of serving alongside. And on my 59th birthday, he called me and said, "Mom, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to get dressed nice and meet me somewhere tomorrow morning." He drove me to Maplewood Drive. He parked in front of this house. He put a key in my hand. He said, "Happy birthday, Mom. This is yours. Your name is already on the deed." I said, "Marcus, this is too much." He said, "Mom, you worked 2 jobs for 4 years so I could have shoes that fit. You get the house. No argument. The house is worth $1.5 million. Marcus paid for it in full. He saved for years. He invested carefully. He planned it the way he plans everything, quietly, thoroughly, without announcing himself until the moment was right. Not one of my neighbors knew any of this. Why would they? Marcus visited when he could holidays, my birthday, occasional weekends when he had leave. He came in civilian clothes. He helped me with things around the house. We had dinner. He left. He was just a tall, polite young man who visited his mother. Linda had never seen him in uniform. She had never seen the Navy vehicle. She had connected none of the dots. All she saw was a black woman in a $1.5 million house, and she could not make that equation balance in her mind. So she decided I must not belong there. Now here is the part I haven't told you yet. That same Saturday evening, the city was holding its annual leadership gala, the most prestigious formal event in this city. Politicians, business figures, community leaders, held at the Grand Riverside Hotel, once a year, black tie. I had been invited as a guest of honor. 30 years of community service, founding the Maplewood Food Bank, mentoring young women, running the Saturday literacy program at the community center. The city committee had voted to give me their highest civilian honor, the Community Legacy Award. I had known for 3 months. I had bought my gown deep burgundy, floor-length silk, had my mother's pearl earrings cleaned, had my hair done Thursday. I was going to that gala no matter what Linda had done to my morning. But here is the thing that made that evening into something I will carry for the rest of my life. Marcus had called me 2 weeks earlier. "Mom," he said, "I've arranged something for the gala night. I want to escort you. I want to do it properly." I told him he didn't have to do all that. He said, "Mom, I've been waiting 3 years for the right moment. Please just let me do this." I said yes. I had no idea what "do it properly" meant in Marcus's language. I was about to find out. At 6:15 in the evening, I was standing in my hallway in my burgundy gown, my mother's pearls in my ears, my hair done, lipstick on. I heard the engines before I saw anything, the sound of multiple vehicles coming down Maplewood Drive. Not fast, slow and deliberate. The kind of arrival that makes people pause whatever they are doing and look up. I heard the engines cut. I heard doors opening, multiple doors. 1, 2, 3, 4, more. I picked up my evening bag, straightened my back, and I opened my front door. 3 black navy SUVs were parked in front of my house. 2 in the road, 1 at the curb. Their flags on the hoods, polished like mirrors. 8 naval officers in full-dress white uniforms were standing in a formation on my front path, still as statues. Their uniforms white against the evening sky, gold buttons catching the last light. The entire street stopped. A car that had been pulling out of a driveway 3 houses down simply stopped. The driver didn't move. Across the road, a man who had been carrying bags from his car put the bags down on the pavement and just stood there. Lieutenant Brooks, Marcus's personal aide, a tall young man with a composed, serious face, walked to my door, stopped, and gave a precise salute. "Mrs. Dorothy Webb, Commander Webb is honored to escort you this evening." And then the rear door of the center SUV opened. My son stepped out, full commander's dress uniform, every stripe in its place, service ribbons across his chest, 8 of them, shoes polished so bright you could see the clouds in them, 6'2", head up, shoulders back, the image of everything we had both worked for in this life. He walked up his childhood driveway, the one I told you he played on as a boy. He walked like he owned the air around him, and he looked at me standing in my doorway, in my burgundy gown, and he smiled, the exact smile he had when he was 7 years old, and he'd done something that made him proud. He kissed my cheek gently. "You look absolutely beautiful, Mom." "So do you, my son," I said, and my voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. He offered me his arm. I took it. We began to walk toward the SUV. The 8 officers turned in formation, and I allowed myself, just once, to glance to my left. Linda and Greg were standing on the small porch of their company flat. They had been leaving for the evening too. Greg had his car keys in his hand. Linda had her coat halfway on, one arm still in the sleeve. They were completely frozen. Linda's mouth was open. She was staring at Marcus, then at the officers, then at me, then back at Marcus, trying to put together a picture that her assumptions had not prepared her for. Greg had gone very still in the way that men go still when they realize they have made a serious mistake, and there is absolutely nothing they can do about it. I did not stop walking. I did not slow down. I did not look at Linda long enough for it to be a moment between us, because it wasn't her moment. It was mine. Marcus opened the SUV door for me. I got in. Lieutenant Brooks closed it quietly. As we pulled away, I heard very faintly through the window a neighbor calling out from across the street. Then another voice, the sound of people realizing what they had just witnessed. Later, I found out a neighbor had been recording from the moment the SUVs arrived. The video would be everywhere by midnight. But I didn't know that yet. Right then, I just knew one thing. My son was driving me to a gala in a Navy convoy, and Linda was standing outside a company flat with her coat half on and her mouth open. God's timing is not our timing. But Lord, when it arrives perfectly. Hey, wherever you're watching or listening from right now, drop it in the comments below. I want to know where my people are tonight. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your moment, because the gala scene coming up is something you will not forget. The Grand Riverside Hotel knows how to put on an evening. Gold light everywhere. Round tables dressed in white linen. A stage at the front of the ballroom, lit warmly. The city seal displayed behind a podium of dark mahogany. 500 people, maybe more, all in their finest. Marcus and I were escorted to our seats by Lieutenant Brooks. The head table, front and center, directly facing the stage. The table reserved for honorees and their guests. I set my evening bag down, accepted a glass of water, looked around the room, and then I saw them. Greg's company had purchased corporate tickets. Linda and Greg were being shown to their seats near the back of the room. Standard corporate table, a long walk from the front. The table was pleasant enough, I'm sure, but it was at the back. I watched Linda's eyes moving across the room as she sat down. The habit of a person scanning the crowd, reading the social geography of a room. Her eyes traveled from table to table, reading faces, reading seating positions. Then they stopped. They found me. I watched her process it. I watched her eyes move from me to Marcus, beside me in his full commander's dress. I watched the moment she understood where I was sitting. I watched her face move through surprise, then confusion, then something that looked like a door closing inside her. I picked up my water glass, took a slow, calm sip, turned back to Marcus. The program began at 7 o'clock. The mayor spoke. Several community leaders were recognized with warm applause. Then, the master of ceremonies returned to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a singular honor tonight to welcome a man who represents the very best of what service looks like. Recipient of the Distinguished Service Medal, decorated naval commander. A man who leads not from behind a desk, but from the front, alongside the people in his charge. Please welcome Commander Marcus Webb of the United States Navy. The room stood, all 500 people on their feet, before he even reached the stage. The applause was the rolling kind, the kind that starts and builds and doesn't find its ceiling for a long time. Marcus walked to the stage with the same quiet confidence he uses for everything. He shook hands. He stood at the microphone. He looked out at the room. He said, "I have served this country with everything I have, and I would do it again without hesitation. But tonight, the one thing I want to say, the only thing that really matters, is this. Everything I am, I learned first from one person. She worked 2 jobs for 4 years, so I didn't have to worry about anything except becoming who I was supposed to be. She never once complained. She never once asked me to notice. She just did it, every day, because that's who she is." He turned and looked directly at me. "Mom, I hope this evening is a small piece of what you deserve." The room followed his eyes. 500 faces turned toward the head table. Toward me. I held Marcus's gaze. I put my hand over my heart. I did not look away. I did not look toward the back of the room. The final award of the evening came near the end of the program. The MC stepped back to the microphone. "And now the highest honor we give at this gala, the Community Legacy Award. This award goes to an individual whose 30 years of service to this city has been consistent, selfless, and quietly extraordinary. She founded the Maplewood Food Bank in 2009, which has served over 40,000 meals. She has personally mentored over 200 young women. Her colleagues describe her as, and I quote, directly, the kind of person who makes a neighborhood worth living in. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's Legacy Award recipient, Mrs. Dorothy Webb." I stood up. The head table stood. The tables around us stood. Then it spread, table by table, across that enormous ballroom, until all 500 people were on their feet. For me, the woman they'd made, prove herself in her own driveway that same morning. I walked to that stage the way my mother taught me to walk into any room, unhurried, back straight, head up, like you arrived on purpose. I took the award. I held it. I looked out at the room, and I said, 3 years ago my son gave me a house with a garden. I planted roses in that garden. People said that spot didn't get enough sun. They said I was wasting my time. Every spring, without fail, those roses bloom. I paused. Don't let anyone tell you where you belong. Don't let anyone make you prove what you already know. Put down your roots anyway. Tend them. Be patient. And let God do the rest. The room applauded. I walked back to the head table. Marcus was standing. He took my hand when I sat down. We didn't say anything to each other. We had said it all already, in other ways. Over 38 years of a love that neither of us had words big enough for. The reception after the ceremony was warm and full. Champagne, small plates, music low enough to talk over. People stopped by the head table all evening, the mayor, a city council woman, former volunteers from the food bank who were now grown women with families of their own. I felt, that evening, completely and entirely like myself. It was around 9:30 when I saw Linda coming across the room. She had left Greg at their table. She was walking alone, with the careful walk of a person who is approaching something she is not sure she deserves to approach. Her coat was off now. Her expression was different from the morning. All the certainty was gone. She looked smaller, not physically, something behind her eyes. She stopped 2 feet in front of me. Mrs. Webb. Her voice was quiet. Nothing like the bright, sweet voice at my driveway this morning. I don't know how to begin. What happened this morning was wrong. I know that. I think I knew it even as it was happening, and I did it anyway, and that makes it worse, not better. She paused. Her eyes went wet. I was jealous of your house. I want to say that honestly. I saw that house, and I couldn't understand how. Greg and we've worked hard, and we're still in that company flat, and you... She stopped herself, breathed. I made assumptions. About you. About how you could have something like that. And those assumptions were ugly, and I'm ashamed of them. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded handkerchief. Pressed it to her eyes. I am so sorry. For this morning, for the police, for all of it. And I would very much like to start over. If you'd be willing, I'd like to be a real neighbor to you. A real one. She extended her hand toward me. Open palm. A gesture of friendship. I looked at her hand. I looked at her face. And I thought about what real forgiveness looks like. What it costs. What it is for. And who it's for. I thought about the 60 seconds I gave myself at my kitchen table that morning. I thought about my roses. And then I spoke. Linda. My voice was calm. I did not lower it. I did not perform anything. I hear what you're saying, and I believe that you mean it, right now, in this moment. I do. She nodded, eyes still wet. But I need you to understand something. My son does not have a commander's uniform so that I can be worth your respect. I was worth your respect the day I moved onto that street, 3 years ago, before you ever knew my son's name, or his rank, or what he'd earned. I was worth your respect when I was in my garden, in my old blue shirt with dirt on my gloves this morning. A woman does not need a $1.5 million house, or an award, or 8 Navy officers in white uniforms to deserve to be believed in her own front yard. Linda was very still. You were jealous of my house. I understand that. But that jealousy led you to look at me and decide I must be a liar, that I must be there illegally, that I must be a squatter in a house my son bought for me with years of his service and his sacrifice. You took his love for me and you made it into a crime. I looked at her hand, still extended. I forgive you, Linda. I do. Because forgiveness is something I do for myself, not for the person who wronged me. But friendship, real friendship, is not something you earn by apologizing once you've been embarrassed. That's not a friendship. That's a transaction. I took a slow breath. People who cannot offer dignity to a black woman before they know her son's rank, before they see the cars, and the uniform, and the awards, those people haven't learned the most basic thing about being a neighbor. And I'm not able to be the one who teaches them that lesson, while also being their friend. I'm too old for that, and I'm too tired. I held her eyes for one more moment, not with anger, with clarity. Then I turned, and I walked back to my son. Linda stood in that spot for a few seconds. Then she walked back to Greg's table. They left the gala before the music stopped. The video the neighbor took of 3 Navy SUVs, 8 officers in dress whites, and my son walking up my driveway in his commander's uniform was shared in the neighborhood app before midnight. By Sunday morning, it had several thousand local views. By Monday, people I had never met were commenting on it from other cities. The comments were everything you might imagine, and some things you might not. Officer Reeves sent me a written apology through the local precinct on Monday. It was a full page, handwritten. He said he was embarrassed by the call, that he had known from the moment he arrived what it was, and that he wished he had said more to Linda before he left. I kept the letter. I thought it was honest and brave, and I respect honest and brave. The Homeowners Association received 47 formal complaints about Linda's conduct over the following 2 weeks. Neighbors who had never spoken more than 5 words to me in 3 years left cards and flowers at my door. I accepted every gesture graciously. I thanked everyone genuinely. But I did not pretend we were suddenly close. Some distances don't close with a flower. Paul, the neighbor who had followed Linda to my driveway that morning, left a handwritten note in my mailbox 6 days later. He wrote that he had gone along with something his gut told him was wrong, and that he'd been asking himself why for a week. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but he wanted me to know he was ashamed. I read that note twice. I thought there was real honesty in it. Sometimes a quiet reckoning is its own form of courage. Linda and Greg listed their company flat for sublease 11 weeks after the gala. I found out from the building manager not from gossip, but because he wanted me to know, in case I had any input on who might move in next. The listing went up on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the neighborhood app had 3 separate threads about it. I said nothing in those threads. I had nothing to say. I walked past their flat one Sunday morning in January. The curtains were drawn. The small porch where Linda and Greg had stood frozen that October evening was empty. The little potted plant by their door had died. I kept walking, past their door, down the path, back toward my own gate, toward my own wraparound porch, toward my own 14-foot ceilings and my sunroom that catches the light at 7 a.m., toward my roses. Marcus calls every Sunday morning. We talk for at least an hour, usually more. He never asks about the neighbors. He asks about the garden. "How are the roses looking, Mom?" And every week, I give him the same answer. "Stronger every year, baby. Stronger every year. You cannot pull up roots that go deep enough. You can call the police. You can stand at the edge of someone's property and decide they don't belong there. You can make them stand in their own garden and prove themselves in front of an audience. But some things that have been planted with love and sacrifice and 20 years of tending those things will outlast every hand that tried to pull them up. Mine did. If this story stayed with you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear this today. And if you're a parent raising a son or daughter to be the kind of person Marcus became, leave that in the comments. I want to read every single one. Subscribe if you haven't. There are more stories coming, and you do not want to miss them.